Welcome to Order Militarist Radio TV, lifelong Catholics, and what we do is all for free, and for love of Jesus Christ, and for Holy Mother, the Church, and defend our Holy Mother, the Church. We are back. We're going to do a show exposing the talking heads of Catholic media and how they are not actually independent media. You're welcome, Brother Alexis, to the show.
Thank you, AJ. Long time no see. I've been busy here at Rome, organizing the recognition, the fact that conclave was legally invalid. So I've been very busy and said, AJ, in October, I don't think I could do shows, so I'm glad I'm back. And I don't know if you've noticed, AJ, have you been following the Charlie Kirk assassination
Yeah,
news
yeah.
and all the talk shows about it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have been too. So, AJ and I, we've done a lot of videos here. You have like what, 1,200, 1,400 videos
Yeah.
at Auto Militaris, and we've gone down almost every rabbit hole. So, but I don't normally watch other people. So after having in spare time spent a month watching other channels, I realized that there's a lot we can learn from them, and yet there's a lot they could learn from us.
Mm-hmm.
And I really learned a lot about the dynamics of YouTube, you know. So where do you want to begin, AJ?
Yeah, that these talking heads are actually masters in psychology.
Yeah, they do. So I noticed this because I had an uncle. His name was Anthony Manna, and he was from the hills of Salerno here in Italy. And Salerno is where Saint Hildebrand, Gregory the Seventh, and Saint Matthew the Apostle were buried, in addition to Saint Alphonsus. And he met my aunt at a water fountain in Rome in like 1957 or something, and ended up marrying her and emigrating to the States. And he was a salesman. And so in Atlantic City, there's this boardwalk. If you played Monopoly, which is based on Atlantic City, there's a real estate called Boardwalk. But in Atlantic City, there's this like it used to be made of mahogany, a mahogany walkway, which is about 50, 60 feet wide, even wider at some points. And it runs along the entire beach between the where the buildings are of the city and where the sand is of the beach. And the beach in Atlantic City is sometimes 100 or 1,000 feet wide sand. Atlantic City was like the first resort in the East Coast. It was hooked by rail to Philadelphia, which is unbelievably hot in the summer. So he spent his lifetime working at these stores that sold things. And he was a very sought after employee because he knew how to pitch anything. He could sell anything to anyone. I'll never forget when I was like 14 years old, and I went with my cousin, Desiree Nana, and she said, "I'm bringing my father his dinner. You want to come along?" I said, "Yeah, Desi." Okay. I only have two cousins, so we used to visit them in the summertime. So we walk. Her older brother, my other cousin, drives us up to the place and leaves us off, and we walk up on the boardwalk, and we bring him his dinner. Well, he hadn't seen me in like a year because we only visited once a year. So we start talking, and he was in the midst of trying to sell this very elegant antique chair to this wealthy lady who had a fancy hat and everything. And this chair was like $600. So you're talking about 1975, a chair that's like $600 isn't some small amount of money. You wouldn't think of spending and it wasn't a comfy chair. It was like a fancy chair that you would put in a parlor. Okay. It's a bit too fancy to put at a dining room table, and you wouldn't put it at any table you're doing anything. It's the kind of chair you would ask a guest to sit in while you're waiting. So you already have to have a very big house. And she was like, no, I just came in here to look at porcelain vases from China. I'm not interested in a chair. And I heard him try to convince her and stuff. So later the next evening, he wasn't working, and I was and my cousin, and he invited me to his dinner table in his house because he lived right next to my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. So I was glad to get the invitation. My brothers and I said to him at one point in the meal, "Uncle Anthony, what kind of luck did you have with that lady in the chairs? You know, it didn't seem like you were going to convince her to buy even one. He goes, Alexis, I sold her two. He never actually explained me how to do it because that was his art. But this is the thing. Some people are really experts on how to convince you.
Hmm.
And there's no more shops like that, I think, in Atlantic City on the boardwalk. Atlantic City is now all casinos and stuff. Where do people with that art go? They're now on social media.
Yeah.
And they run the most popular channels. Now, obviously, it's a different class of people. My uncle, I think, only had like a high school education, and he had a heavy Southern Italian accent, you know. So he was good at selling imports because he seemed like he was from overseas, which he was. But here, I mean, if you t listen to YouTube and you watch anyone like Candace Owens or Ian Carroll or um, Tucker Carlson, at first it appears that what they really are. They're highly educated, eloquent people
Hmm.
who are quick to think, quick to express themselves, very accurate in which words they choose. They're not given to exaggerations. They know how to practice self-control, reticence. They're very curious-minded. They're very, almost you'd say, broad-minded, and they're willing to hear all sides and talk to anyone. There's a lot of edifying qualities. But if you take a step back and start saying, you know, why are they throwing an ad right at that moment in the video? And why are they only talking about those things? And why they never talk about anything that's unpopular? Then you start seeing through the fog that they're good salesmen. They're
Hmm.
much higher quality than my uncle on the boardwalk, Uncle Anthony. And um, and that's what makes them so influential. They won't say anything to offend really anyone unless they're quite certain that 95% of their audience is going to agree with them. You know,
Yeah.
it's and so is that a good thing? I don't know. Maybe priests. I'm not a priest. I've never been a priest, and that's maybe what priests would say. If you're a priest listening to the show, comment. Is that maybe how you do public speaking is to try to start on a popular point? I would know. I just don't have that talent. That's not my father's side of the family.
Yeah. Notice in some of the videos being shared on X or Twitter by Republicans against Trump that have shared twice already a video of Candace Owen talking about how she calls Justin Trudeau gay, lying about Zelensky being gay, lying about other and Macron being gay. Well, that one might be true, but when she starts talking about Zelensky, then she's selling what she's supposed to be selling from the Russians to hurt you, Vladimir Zelensky, and to hurt the war efforts of Ukraine defending itself and defending Europe from Russia.
Mhm. Now, AJ, you're from the plains of Kansas. How do let's say you met some friends at the ice cream bar that you took me to when I visited you, very good ice
Hmm.
cream bar, and you start talking about anything. Do the average people in Kansas act this way when they're talking?
No,
Are they like salesmen?
no,
Are
they
they even concerned whether they're going to offend you with what they say?
no, they, they don't like salesmen. They don't like those that come to the door and just I mean to the come out to where we live, where most everybody lives, out in the country and tries to sell things. Um,
Like the Electrolux vacuum clean salesman.
yeah.
Yeah, and the I would assume that none of the people in town have a big social media following.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so we get the impression on social media that if someone has like 5 million followers, we should listen to them and they have something important to say, but that might not be true at all.
Yeah, because as we come to learn about these talking heads, they have they have contracts with social media to get them followers. They have a contract with YouTube, Google, Rumble, BitChute, maybe Odyssey. Don't know about that. To get them followers, get them views, and rake in the dough.
Yeah. I had no idea this was going on until like what was it? It was in May of this year, because YouTube decided to stop censoring people. They still censor me on YouTube. I have 3 YouTube channels, and Ordo Militaris has like 2 or 3 channels. And all of a sudden, I don't have the banner anymore saying, "You've gotten 2 strikes. If you get one more, we're going to
Hmm.
ban your channel." Then around December, it was, if you want the strikes removed from your channel, you have to take this course on understanding YouTube community values. I was like, I didn't click that at all. But in May, I was like, one of my videos on the Conclave went to like 54,000 views. And all of a sudden, YouTube was like, "Oh, would you like to become a YouTube partner?" I was like, "What is a YouTube partner?" And they're saying, and their description was, "We'll suggest what videos for you to talk about, and that will help promoting and will help you get advertisers. And you have to set up an ad account and stuff." So I had benefactors said, Your video on the Conclave is going viral. Let's start an ad account and pay YouTube to promote it." So I set up the account and they said, "What video you want to promote?" And I chose that video, and my advertising account was immediately frozen. And started asking me for all this personal information. And when I gave it, it froze it even more. It never activated. It claimed it activated it and said, "Now we'll start the promotion of this video." And I had a benefactor that paid $1,000. And after a week, not one penny was taken out of the fund. Because what they did instead of promoting the video was they froze the video and they stopped distributing it. So, AJ, what do you think's going on? I mean, does that
Yeah, I think you're the honest, normal person on YouTube.
I froze?
Yeah, I think on for those who are normal, honest people on YouTube, YouTube doesn't want them, doesn't want to promote them, but those like Candace Owens and others, they will promote them because of who they are, their connections, their ideology, their political background, and also it is those who run them, control them, like the GOP or GOP out of Tennessee or wherever. So they will be promoted and paid by Google, YouTube to do shows that will attract them to either party. And
I think that's about right. I mean, I don't know if you heard about this character, Ian Carroll. I never heard of him before he was on Candace's own show in the spring. But I did some research on him, not about his biography, about his social media presence. And he was like a nobody until Joe Rogan invited him on his show. Now, Joe Rogan invites the most famous, important people in the country. He
hmm
doesn't invite nobodies. And Ian Carroll, 2, 3 years ago, looked more disheveled than Destiny, who's this ultra left-wing influencer gamer. Ian Carroll had long hair. he really looked like he was cultivating the hippie look from the 60s. And he had a very effeminate behavior. He had disheveled dress. And he appears on Candace Owens' show. And now he has a haircut like Elvis Presley. He has a clean shaven appearance like from the 50s. He's trying to look like a Main Street white guy. He somehow got rid of his Southern accent and now talks in a more standard English. Now, who do you know can change their accent?
Actors, intel
Yeah, I
agents.
mean, and who paid? I mean, the Joe Rogan's handlers told him to have this guy on, you know,
Yeah,
and for all his efforts, all Ian's efforts to look more masculine and more mainstream straight white guy, he still has a effeminate bent to him. He hasn't been able to eliminate that, but he has haircuts that are very secular. It's not a very serious or academic style haircut, and his speech is completely foul. He says the most foul, X-rated things now and then, which his show is certainly not. If I had children, I wouldn't let them watch the guy. And most of the people who have YouTube followings do that. But where were these people during the pandemic?
they were silent, going along with it, or if they
You know,
weren't going
and now
along with it, they were allowed to say the opposition and not
yeah,
get
or they
paid
kept their
for it.
mouths. Yeah, they kept their mouths shut. So, I mean, I'm so hated for what I did in the pandemic that I can't get, even if I have a third party create a social media account for me, as soon as they know it's associated with me, it's just like
Hmm.
burn. So, are these people to be, I mean, have what we said so far convince anyone to listen to what these people are saying?
It shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube we know is an absolutely evil organization.
Hmm.
Now, I was shocked to find out that Candace, so in YouTube, if you do a live show, you can have this live chat go on next to your video
Yeah,
and people can comment and you can set up the rules whether they comment every as frequently as they want or every minute, 5 minutes, whether they have to be subscribed to your channel to comment.
yeah,
And you can put controls like you allowed bad words that you want censored, and you can assign someone to be like your chat moderator. Now, if you want your comment to be seen, there's this thing that you can turn on called super chats. And on a super chat, the person donates $5, their comment immediately becomes like a colored box around it. If it's
hmm
100, it gets bigger and bigger. And that's called super chat. And in September alone, Candace Owens raised $130,000 on super chats.
yeah. And
So this is like
then,
stand-up comedians on stage
then it was like
and you throw
30,
money at them.
yeah, and it was like 39,000 went to YouTube, and so she raked in $91,000.
Yeah. 91,000 and she did 16 shows. So she's getting like 4,000, 5,000 a show. That's only from super
Hmm.
chats. That's she also has this thing if you want to send her a message, it's called Min Connect. And if you pay a certain money, you can send so much of a message. If you want to send her a 250 character message, it's like $100. And if you want her to reply to your message with like a 30-second video, that's like $2,000. The prices aren't correct that I'm quoting. So that's not counting all the money she makes in that.
Yeah.
So how can anyone avoid the conflict of interest
Hmm.
in these conditions, knowing that if at any time during your live stream you say that YouTube is a corrupt corporation that manipulates people with its algorithm, well, you know what's going to happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Your channel ends, your money flow ends, your reach ends, your audience goes away.
And they're not allowed to find you wherever you go.
Hmm.
So many famous speakers went to Rumble and they just basically disappeared. You know, who was it? James Corbett was on
Hmm.
YouTube, and he was been on YouTube like 15 years or 10 years doing videos out of Japan. He's a Jewish secularist from Calgary, and he's very anarchical, libertarian. He believes that government is essentially evil of its very self, and we should all live in small communities. Okay, so he has some radical political ideas, but he's like one of the leading critics on watching big government and globalist takeovers. And he had I can't remember how many people would watch his shows. It was like huge. He had, I think,
Hmm.
at one time millions of followers, and they just canceled him. And then he disappeared. And I was saying to myself, how is it that if he got canceled on YouTube, he didn't move to Rumble and his followers didn't follow him?
Yeah.
Well, because now I know he lost all that income, so he couldn't hire cameramen, editors, all that stuff, paid promotions, and Rumble doesn't have that mechanism for milking your viewers
Hmm.
for money.
Yeah.
And viewers, unfortunately, unless they get that poke, unless they get that idea that I will be heard if I send money, they wouldn't even send the money to Candace Owens, who has 5.4 million followers, let alone to anyone telling them the truth about how the US government funded Adolf Hitler's rebuilding and arming of Germany so they could destroy Europe.
Yeah. Yep.
And Tucker Carlson, he did this big series on 9/11. Did you watch his series on 9/11, AJ?
Some of it.
Yeah. Did you notice what he didn't say?
Hmm.
Yeah, he never said it was Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
He's convinced that the Israelis did it, and the U.S. government only allowed it to take place. I mean, um, that's what's called a limited hangout.
Hmm.
That's, you know, we know that Zionists are pretty desperate characters, and they have very low morals, if any, and they're willing to do almost anything.
Yeah.
But if you think they could organize and pull off 9/11 all on their own without CIA cooperation,
Yeah.
don't think, yeah, I think you're being very, especially in the year 2000, Now, no, she could be arrested for speaking against Zionists in the United States. So,
So when they begin to go, talk about things and point out how certain things are wrong, they they go for the insult, but not the argument.
yeah, so this is thing I noticed in Christianity, we take it very seriously not to bear false witness.
Hmm.
And a lot of the saints were very concerned about even repeating publicly known information about other people. St. Thomas Aquinas says that once a man's reputation is destroyed, how can he even live? In medieval society, that's especially true. In modern times, what people say about you isn't really as effective since society is so much more complex, and there's always someone out there who likes you. And what is said on social media isn't even heard by everyone. The people in your town probably don't care what is said on social media about you if they know you, like
Hmm.
in your Kansas town,
Yeah.
if someone said on social media AJ was a serial murderer of women in West Virginia, no one in his town would believe it, okay? Because they know who AJ is.
Hmm.
In Massachusetts, they might because no one knows their neighbor. You don't even know the name of your neighbor because people in Massachusetts are so cold. They don't even say hello and they don't visit anyone. And I had there's one neighbor where my relatives live in Massachusetts. and they've lived in the house across the street for 25 years. And when my mother was still alive, I was taking care of her, we'd go for a walk down the street together, which we had never done before. So the woman comes out of the house because she was walking a dog, and she goes, "Oh, hello, who are you?" And we said hello. You know, we were amazed because people in New England don't talk. She goes, "This is the first time I've seen you on the street. When did you move in?" And my mother said, "I've been living here since 1989." And the woman, you know what the woman said? "No, you haven't. I've never seen you before in my life, and I've been here 20 years or like 15 years." And I said to the woman, "I can assure you we've been living here since 1989. You just, you know, we don't go for a walk. So you wouldn't have seen us walk down the street." And my mother especially doesn't go for a walk, and I certainly didn't go for a walk. I'm not the kind of people who go. You probably see my two brothers. They go for a walk daily. "Oh yeah, I have seen those two Italian guys. You know who are they?" I guess they're my older brothers, my mother's sons. So that's how different New England is from Kansas. So um, there's a lot of ad hominems and arguments, and the first rule is Aristotle's rule that if you are going, someone asks you to explain your position, let's say you're in a debate or controversy, and you give the reasons for your position, and the other person says, let's say that I give an argument, and my opponent says, "I mean, you're going to listen to that guy? Look at, he has like almost no hair and it's all white. He's a dinosaur. Why are you listening to him?"
Hmm.
Now, Aristotle calls that the ad hominem argument, which is, he actually doesn't call it that because he spoke Greek, but in Latin we translate it ad hominem, which means an argument that is against the man. Okay, meaning it's an attack on the reputation or the persona of the person speaking. He says that when they begin with an ad hominem, that means they have no reason for their position. Because what are they trying to do? This is, Aristotle didn't understand modern psychology and propaganda, but he saw this being used. This is what a manipulative speaker will do. He'll throw slurs, insults, innuendo, sow doubts about the person's characters, motives, his family history. He'll attack his wife, his mother, his sister, children. He'll just unload on the person, and then they'll discuss the arguments using arguments that you wouldn't accept
Hmm.
unless you had already agreed with this person demonizing the speaker that's been criticized. And that's completely dishonest. And that's a sign of someone who doesn't stand in the truth, doesn't love the truth, and is willing to manipulate his audience. And I noticed listening to people like Ian Carroll and Candace Owens and Zach Costello. The latter two are Catholics, and Tucker Carlson, that a lot of their opponents treat them that way. They go with insults, and especially the Zionists in the United States and media, that's their basic tactic for argument. And because, you know, when you're supporting a genocide in Gaza, what if you actually spelled out your reasons, you would even look worse. You would have to say, well, you know, according to the Talmud, anyone who's not Jewish is worse than a dog. We call them goys, which means they're monsters because they're not the same race as us. We're God's people. And so we're up here with the fifth kind of humanity, and they're way down there. And we're not supposed to breed with them. We're allowed to cheat them, stab them, murder them. And so consequently, since God promised us this land and they're living on us land, we have the right to exterminate them off the face of the earth. That's the Zionist argument. But they can't expound that. That means they can't literally say that out loud because everyone listening to them who's not Jewish would be like, "My gosh, you guys are worse than Adolf Hitler," who, by the way, was Jewish. So they had to do the ad hominems because that's the only way they could get you to agree with their not addressing the argument. And they're very good at that. I'd say that all three of those speakers I mentioned, and most of the others that are online that are talking about things, they're very good at pointing out that, you know, that's not the way to discuss a matter. whether you're talking about a controversy of who killed Charlie Kirk, or whether immigrants should be refused from the United States, or whether the United States should go to war with Venezuela or intervene. That's not the way to deal with it. The way to deal with it is talk about the reasons.
Yeah.
And I'd say this has probably been our biggest weakness on Ona Militaris Radio TV because we've never paid attention to the psychological aspect.
Yeah. Then yeah, how Catholics we expose falsehoods compared to how Chad Inc. does, where it's it's like a have you ever seen a knife fight or watched them on TV or watch knife fighting training? It's a lot like that when you're going up against Chad Inc. on social media. It's just it's just I can't explain it. Just ferocious, evil, and you always have to have your guard up.
Yeah, I can say that I've been on the internet since 1990 when the internet was getting launched. Before I became a friar, my brother had access, so you had modem that logged in and made noise, and you had to wait for the handshake to go through, and then you could get small amounts of data. And as soon as I took my vows and my order, I was put in charge of getting a whole order on the internet. So I've been on the internet since the 90s. So I've seen lots of change. But at the beginning, in any interaction, if you said to someone, this is my view, they would respond. If you would say, take a look at this, what do you think? What would you disagree? They would be, okay, I'll read it and I'll respond.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't, I'd have to say, since 2019, 2020, I haven't seen hardly anyone on social media that actually will say, I'll read it and respond.
Yeah.
Um, there's no more human interaction, even by the people who are big influencers on, for example, on Twitter. There is no human interaction. I noticed that's different on YouTube. If you make a comment to some of these YouTubers, they will actually come down and like or thank you or
Yeah.
reply. They almost never will reply, but they'll do a like or thank you or something like that. They try to interact with your views, but the traddies though, and the SETIs, SETIs are even worse than the traddies,
Mm-hmm.
and the conservatives. It's like it's either they totally ignore you, you share with them an article that quotes papal teaching,
Mm-hmm.
that praises the saints, that gives examples and proves your argument. It's as if, it's as if you said, here's a copy of a book explaining my position, because you have a different position. Take a look at it and tell me why I'm wrong. It's like they throw it in the garbage.
Yeah.
And that's not a human way of acting.
Um,
That's certainly not a Christian way of acting.
when
But oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
I remember multiple times where I just engage with whoever we're talking about on some certain show, if it's Taylor Marshall or one of the Gordon Bros, I would tag that person, no one else, and share the show and say, this is our argument about why you're wrong and how you're wrong, blah, 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 blah. And here they come. They tag 9 different people to join in the attack against you.
Yeah, so this is if they just treat with total silence, that's kind of like a propagandist. If you were talking to a member of the Bolshevik Revolution and you
Mm-hmm.
sent a tract pointing out this story of Bolshevism and they're on the other side of the world, of course they'd throw it right in the garbage. though they put you on a list to, be watched or something. But the person who calls in nine others to join him attacking, we've seen that a lot because we've been attacked a lot on social media and Ordo Militaris in our work to defend Christians. That shows someone that's extremely insecure.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. And feels extremely threatened by conversation. I mean, I won't even say the truth because I'm not going to claim we're in the possession of all truth, but conversation they find threatening. And it's a real ignorant way to handle it. It's almost like a mafia
Mm-hmm.
and a gang. And I had, or they'll do even worse. They'll flag your comment
Mm-hmm.
and they'll get their friends to flag your account to get you banned, which
Mm-hmm.
is the worst of the worst. And the Zionists will do that particularly. The Zionists are worse. They'll find out how you're taking donations, and then they'll call up that company and tell them to shut your account down.
Yeah.
And at Ordo Militaris Catholica, Ordo Militaris Montana, we've had our PayPal account shut down 3 times, and other Wise account was flagged twice and ultimately shut down totally. And I think maybe a dozen other payment platforms wouldn't even consider us having an account with them for political reasons. So, um, but that's all mafia kind of activity because AJ, if these laymen are on social media to promote the Catholic faith or defend the Latin Mass, and those things are of God, why are they using mafia tactics?
Because they're not of God. They're they're using the smells and bells and the lace as the mafia did. Oh, I'm at church. I'm at mass. I'm at confession. I had nothing to do with the bumping off this guy. And I was here. I didn't do nothing.
I 5 years ago, I would be very reluctant to agree with you. Okay. But we have an example that I think everyone in the Catholic world knows about by now, how Matt Fradd, who founded Pints with Aquinas and is a graduate from the Thomas Aquinas College in California, which has a stellar reputation. I've always admired that school. Decided to join the Daily Wire and move his program to the Daily Wire, run by Ben Shapiro, who is a out and out Zionist, who basically
Mm-hmm.
said everyone in Gaza should be killed. And if you would disagree with me, you're an anti-Semite. And he chose to do that now that the Zionist control of America is completely exposed. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Matt Fradd is an Australian who moved to the United Kingdom, I think. So it's not like he comes from a society with the traditions of free speech and liberty that we have in the United States. Okay. But he's like, why is everyone thinking I betrayed anyone? He doesn't realize that everything he said in that program for years
Yeah.
about the Catholic faith obliges him to act in a certain way.
Yeah.
He doesn't see how it obliges him at all. And we get back to, my Uncle Anthony wasn't entirely dishonest because he was selling quality products, even though I didn't quite agree with the prices on them. It's the way he convinced people to buy more than maybe they needed. But he didn't sell out the Catholic faith. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, Matt Fradd would have been more honest if he just sold Ben Shapiro his show and had Ben Shapiro sign someone else to it, because then he wouldn't be directly involved
Yeah.
in what they're doing. But a Jew will never pay a Catholic good money for
Yeah.
anything. If you're Jewish and you have a useless blog, you'll be paid $150 million and be made editorial in chief of CBS News.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not a Jew, you won't be paid a penny.
Yep.
And Matt Fradd evidently never believed anything he said, or at least he doesn't believe it has any bearing on the moral life. And this is why I had to burst out laughing the other day when I see Michael Matt tweet out an article on Twitter that he's publishing at the Remnant by his correspondent in Singapore. He doesn't have correspondents in Singapore. He just someone in Singapore wanted to get published in his paper, and he has no one who wants to publish in his paper because he's pretty much discredited. So he calls him in my Singapore correspondent, and opens up with a quote from Cardinal Burke, allegedly made during the recent traditional pilgrimage to St. Peter's Basilica, saying that Catholic martyrs were inspired by this traditional Latin Mass. They were inspired to go to martyrdom by this Mass. And it's like you actually trying to manipulate the narrative, the entire Catholic religion to the Latin Mass. I mean, how about the martyrs in Lebanon who went to the Mass in Greek or in Aramaic? Are they not inspired?
Yeah.
How about the Christians of Egypt who celebrate in Coptic? They weren't inspired to become martyrs?
Or the Armenians.
Or the Armenian, or the Ukrainian, or the Russian liturgies, or Polish, you only inspired to martyrdom if you attend the Latin Mass. But the argument was pretty darn clear. When you could say Catholics at Mass have been inspired by God to be faithful unto death, that's a perfectly Catholic statement. But when you say the Latin Mass has inspired Catholics to be martyrs, you're shifting the work of the Holy Spirit, which belongs to the God, down to a liturgy written by men, because the Latin Mass, L Masses, were written by men. Let's make that absolutely clear. Christ did not leave rubrics. Okay. Christ did celebrate the Last Supper, but you don't find anything in the Bible other than the most absolute minimal. Everything else has been added by the apostles, doctors, fathers of the church, bishops, and stuff. So it's written by men, okay? Even though some are more inspired than others in what they did.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, that's not the same thing. It's not God, it's an instrument, You don't praise the chisel or the paintbrush of the artist. You praise the artist in whose hand it's held. And so I was just totally shocked that Michael Matt would go there and that Cardinal Burke would go there, because they want the next generation to be so loyal to the Latin Mass that they think that is the source of the Catholic faith and of divine inspiration in its highest level, which would be to go to martyrdom. That's just totally whacked. That is totally whacked, and that's not the Catholic religion.
Yeah.
AJ, have you ever read the life of a saint who said, I just went to Mass, so today I want to become a martyr?
Mm-mm.
Or I just prayed in Latin, so now I know I must die for Christ.
I know of a saint that went to both. The earliest form of the Latin Mass, Saint Olga. She's like, nah. Then she goes to the Divine Liturgy in Constantinople at Hagia Sophia.
In Greek.
This is heaven on earth. And she
Yes,
goes to the emperor to ask for a bishop to come back to Kiev to baptize every single Ukrainian.
Yeah. So if you say that the martyrs were inspired by the traditional Latin Mass, and just leave it like that, and I'm not entirely sure that Michael Matt is quoting Cardinal Burke in context, but nevertheless, Cardinal Burke said that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not even a Catholic statement, because, hey, did the Holy Spirit descend on Pentecost and all of a sudden everyone was speaking Latin? Did you read that in the Bible, AJ?
Mm-mm.
Was the Bible written in Latin?
No.
So, the Latin, I love the Latin liturgy. I love Gregorian chant. But I'm not so dishonest to claim that Latin is the only language in which grace can be communicated. That's just totally absurd. It's not Catholic. Okay. It's not even historically accurate. It's almost like the Protestants in England claiming that the King James Version is the only inspired version
Mm,
of the Bible,
yeah,
you
they
know.
do that. I
Hmm.
mean, then I mean, what version of the Latin Mass? The one by the CIA Pope John the 23rd, who was given $1 million to call that council, or the one put together finally by Pius V?
The funny thing is about it, you can go to a lot of groups that say that the Latin Mass, okay, independent chapels. For example, Society of St. Pius X. And I don't know if this is always true, but 20 years ago it was true, that if you suggested to the Society of St. Pius X priest that he shouldn't use the liturgy of 1962, but he should use 58 or 48 or in 1917 or 1574, he would look at you like you were possessed.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what the argument was? Pope John the 23rd, validly elected, he abolished those old missals. So you can't use them anymore. That would be disobedient.
Mm.
You know, coming out of the mouth of a priest who was ordained illicitly
Mm-hmm.
by a bishop who was consecrated illicitly and who's saying mass without permission of the local ordinary illicitly,
Mm-hmm.
and is an effective schism from the hierarchy, effective, I'm not saying juridically, but effectively, morally at least. Um, and it was only, I think, the Institute of the Christ the King that started saying that for Holy Week they would use the 48 missal because they didn't want to use Bonini's Holy Week. But if you say to any of them, I think, I want to use the 1574 missal because I don't even like Urban the Eighth's reform of the hymns, because Urban the Eighth didn't like the old traditional hymns that were in the breviary and the missal before. He wanted to remove them of medieval exaggerations, and stuff, and make their Latin more classical and less medieval. They'll just, consider you an outcast. So, and this is not even a question of private interpretation, because obviously we should use the forms of liturgy that the Roman Pontiff has approved. And the Roman Pontiffs, up until times of the Council, would abolish the previous usage and establish a new one. And they certainly have the right to do that. But just because the Pope does that doesn't oblige us to hold that the decision he's made was the best or is good for everyone or makes the old illicit, immorally illicit of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because the old one was also approved by the Pope. And there are forms of the Roman Rite that were never approved by any Pope, as far as we can tell, because there's no documents and like the Carolingian Missal that Charlemagne ordered distributed throughout his entire realm. He probably got the permission of the Pope. I mean, he sent some copies to Rome, and that was very influential in the development of the Roman Rite. But
Yeah.
it's not like, if you open up a Tridentine missal, Missale Romanum, and you read at the beginning the decree of Pius V, of Urban VIII, of Clement XIII. It's all there in the Latin in the beginning. There was no such thing in Carolingian times. So if the Pope approved it in any age, isn't it equally as good as what any other Pope, true Pope, who's Catholic, approves in any other age? You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you know the least thing about theology and you have the least sensus Catholicus, you can say, of course. Because otherwise, I'd have to hold that my ancestors um, in Greece in the 8th century, praying in Greek during the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom before the great schism between East and West, were somehow never inspired to martyrdom and weren't being sanctified.
Yeah.
It's ignorant and it's petty to say things like that. And to come out of the mouth of a cardinal, that's
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Now let's get into how their persona are different than than they are in private.
yeah. So the public reputation of a person who's very famous
Mm-hmm.
and what they're really like, it often comes out what they're really like eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get so famous, you have, journalists going through your garbage. Okay. To put it DC is a concrete example. I think that's illegal now in in some countries, but that used to be a thing back in the 70s and 80s and stuff. I'm that old, so I still remember it. And we saw this recently because since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, there had been a lot of people lauding him to the heights of, sainthood,
Yeah.
prophecy,
Yeah.
Candace Candace Owens is convinced he's in heaven and that he had the gift of prophecy. And I'll put aside the question of whether a Protestant can be in this. The Catholic Church does teach that it's possible for people outside the church to be in the state of grace because they're suffering from invincible ignorance, and that God assigns them at their baptism an angel that guides them towards the truth. But we're not permitted to say they can be saved if they died outside the church. Although with someone like a Charlie Kirk, you don't know if he's converted in private. In his own heart, he became Catholic and was just putting it off for other decisions and stuff. So leave that in the hands of God. But Dinesh D'Souza just last week or a few days ago released some text message in which Charlie Kirk called Nick Fuentes vermin, and was really upset with Dinesh D'Souza for giving um, Nick Fuentes a platform. Now, if you don't know, Nick Fuentes is a Hispanic American. I think his father was Mexican. And he began as a groper, and he lives just for attention. I
Hmm.
mean, he would follow around famous people just to try to get to talk
Yeah.
to them, name mentioned, and he's all on social media, and he has a whole people that follow him. If you criticize him, they'll come after you. But basically,
Mm.
he admires Adolf Hitler in his
Yeah.
in his total ideology. I mean, he's a complete he's not a white Aryan racist. He believes, but what Hitler said of Germans as Aryans, he says of all white people, which is funny because white people wouldn't consider him a white person because he's Mexican.
Hmm.
Although he's lost his tan over the years, maybe he bleaches his skin or something. I don't know. I'm half Sicilian, so you see I have some colored skin because Sicily was under the Spanish Empire for a while, and they brought in black slaves. So I come from a very low class on my mother's side. So I find it ridiculous because, I do consider myself a white person, but, if we're going to get into dispute, I would say, no, I'm not, I'm a Sicilian. I'd be willing to call myself a Sicilian black, just to kind of joke at the whole category. So Catholics don't use these categories.
Yeah.
Okay. So the whole concept of race was invented by Protestants in Germany after Kant as a category. And if you read any of the classical authors, Cicero, Varro, any of the Greek historians, or even medieval historians, you'd be hard pressed to know what the ethnicity of a person is. I mean, they'll say Duns Scotus because he was from Scotland, but they don't say of Augustine, I remember when I was in at the University of Florida, where I was my alma mater, Gaines campus at Gainesville, in a student center. And one day they put up a picture of St. Augustine because it was called the St. Augustine Student Center in the like the hall next to the church. And not knowing who this painting was of, I said to the liberal co-pastor, I said, what saint is that? Is that one of the martyrs of Uganda? Because the guy was painted with the blackest skin of Central Africa. They go, no, that's St. Augustine. I said, which St. Augustine? You mean some Martin? No, that's St. Augustine of Hippo, the father of the church. I looked at him and said, you can't be serious because, he didn't have black skin. Okay. His father was a Roman soldier and his mother was Numidian. Um, and he goes, yeah, of course he's black, because everyone from Nubia is black. I said, no, 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 father. Numidian, not Nubian. Those are two different things. Nubia is a kingdom in the upper Nile, and those people are quite dark skinned, but not even as dark skinned as this painting. You painted the guy as if he's from like the Congo, West Africa, a very dark skin, not like even the East Africans are much lighter skinned because they're bred with Arabs, for example. So I said, there's like no blacks in our student parish. I don't think there was one, maybe there was like a few. So it's like, why did this painting donated? Did you have a commission? Oh no, we told the painter we wanted to paint a black man as Augustine because he's from Africa and we want to show that there's saints from Africa. This guy was so ignorant. He was such a racist. He was obviously totally ignorant of, first of all, I was studying cultural anthropology, so I understood the situation. He had no idea the different racial characteristics of the different populations in Africa and where they come from. And so they painted St. Augustine with a cranial structure of someone from Kenya, a skin color of someone from like Cameroon, and they put him in a habit that was like of um, a Benedictine of the Cluniac Reform. Oh boy, it was so historically inaccurate, anachronistic, the whole thing. I was just like. And they spent like $5,000 in this thing. So I forget how I got into this argument, but my long digression on the painting of St. Augustine. Where
Yeah.
was I, AJ? My old age.
Yeah, we were talking about Nick Fuentes and
Oh,
how.
okay, that's it. Calling people vermin. So Charlie Kirk wasn't the saint everyone thinks he was. And I pray to God he repented of calling Nick Fuentes a vermin, even though I totally disagree with Nick Fuentes. I wouldn't call him a vermin because why go to the ad hominem?
Hmm.
You can merely say he's manipulative. He's using the racist ideology of Adolf Hitler. He is misrepresenting his own ethnic background. He's trying to gain a following among people who aren't even his own ethnicity, like Adolf did. And he says the most outrageously dishonest things, um, and tries to smear entire racial categories. I mean, he went so far as to say that the way to solve the race problem in the United States is deport all the black people or go back to the Jim Crow laws. I mean,
Wow.
that is, hey, America's in favor of free speech, and I wouldn't deny him his right to free. I wouldn't get in the same show speak with someone like that because it's just dishonest. Okay.
Hmm.
But you don't call him a vermin. Okay, so in Christianity, we don't denigrate people to the level of bugs because they have human dignity. So, for all his Christian qualities, Charlie Kirk in private chats spoke in a very coarse way, and really not much different than Nick Fuentes, who probably has called black people and Jewish people vermin. I would assume, just from the little I know about him, but don't quote me.
Yeah. Yeah, we see how these Catholic talking heads, Matt Taylor, Barnhart, acting on the screen differently than compared how they act privately when you try to interact with them. And it's a complete it's it's complete 180. It's
Mm-hmm. It's complete. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, a week ago, Ann Barnhart revealed that she met with Cardinal Burke twice,
mhm.
and maybe like in 2017, 2018, and then again in 2020 to talk about how Benedict was not the Pope and his resignation was invalid. And I will presume that everything she said about those meetings is true for the sake of discussion. Because I don't see how Ann Barnhart, as much as I disagree with her on many things, I wouldn't ever say that she would lie about something like that. But there's something really bizarre about that because this cardinal obviously didn't pay any attention to what she was saying
Yeah.
because he never adopted the position she was advocating. And yet he met with her 2 times, spoke with her for like 45 minutes or an hour and a half, and took all these documents from her and asked her for information to give her more information. And yet he never replied to her, engaged her, got in a public debate about it or anything.
Hmm.
And she speaks of him yet in a still very polite, respectful way. Okay. But when she heard I was hitchhiking to the Ukraine to help the victims of the war, she just lost it completely, you know. She became so enraged that she said in a post, I've done everything to absolutely neutralize Brother Bagnolo so that he has absolutely no effect doing anything. And I really didn't pay attention to what she was doing or saying about me, but I would say that my support for my benefactors went so low I could barely eat for some months. And it took me 3 or 4 years just to get the benefactors back again to pay for my expenses. So it was it's bizarre that she acts towards me who agrees with her on the Benedict renunciation, and yet she acts an entirely different way with the cardinal who doesn't agree with her.
Hmm.
And when I asked to speak with Cardinal Burke, 3 times I asked, I was given a lie saying the cardinal's out of town and he'll get back to you. They never got back to me. He wasn't out of town, he was in town. So, what on earth is going on?
Yeah. Then recently, she helped prove we were correct about whoever runs the blog of Chris Jackson. That is not in a name. It could, and she says it could be multiple people using that name.
I don't know if she said it could be multiple people, but she said it's a pen name.
Hmm.
She didn't say it's a pseudonym or a nom de plume. Okay, so yes, pen name is the same as nom de plume, but in English, when we say nom de plume, we mean a single author has chosen that name because for some reason he doesn't want to use his real name, and it's usually a woman who takes a man's name. Okay.
Hmm.
But when she say it's a pen name, that's kind of bizarre because isn't a pen name the name you use when you're corresponding with someone who like is in prison
Hmm.
or your pen pal or
Yeah.
I don't know. And maybe she just didn't want to use the French nom de plume, but I don't think she's that not cultured. Okay. But maybe in Texas they use pen. I think she's from Texas. And maybe in Texas they say pen name, um, or pseudonym, or that's the name of the publish. But she's a lot more honest than Michael Matt
Yeah.
because Chris Jackson was allowed to write 10 years at the Remnant and he was
Hmm.
allowed to write for several years at 1 Peter 5. And no one was ever informed that that was a pen name.
Yeah. And no one told the public who read those things that this is not a person's name. It's not whoever, and they didn't disclose who they are
Mhm.
until one day we get on Twitter and people are freaking out that Michael Matt removed every reference of Chris Jackson from his website.
And that was what, like a month after we did our show about Chris Jackson and Michael Matt and their
Yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
And did Michael Matt ever thank you for asking those questions?
No,
Did he ever answer your direct question whether Chris Jackson was a U.S. citizen?
nope.
Did he ever admit that Chris Jackson wasn't a real person?
Mm-mm.
Well, and but he did act on it, so that's at least good. So that must attract Ann Barnhart's attention because she was interviewed by Stephen Cox, Kokx,
Mm-hmm.
um, like 2 weeks ago. So she had an opportunity probably to talk with him off camera. I didn't watch their interview at all or anything. But I know she's an inquisitive person, and women are, to find out who Chris Jackson was, which means she probably watched our videos too.
Mm-hmm.
And she never admits it. Um, what's with it, AJ, that you watch someone, but you won't admit you watch them?
Yeah. This is so bizarre because we do our investigation shows and anybody could do it if, we list the books and everybody can do the same shows that we do. And then months, maybe a year later, here they come doing something similar, but they will not give credit for the idea. They will not credit us. They will
Sure.
not credit what Buck we use. They will not. Yeah.
I think it's I think it's in the Book of Kings where
Hmm.
Saint Elijah condemns the fake prophets of Israel of his day, saying or is it God through Isaiah says the fake prophets will steal the words from one another.
The frick?
Okay. And
Yeah.
what I think is going on, using my degree in anthropology, is they come down like your Rumble channel
Hmm.
and they see which videos got the highest views. And then they listen to that video and then they do a video on a similar or the same topic. And they don't say, I got this idea from whoever they got it from, because then people would realize that they're not the source of all truth.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to this opinion because when I went to visit Germany in 2004, I hitchhiked there from Italy, and no, I was staying at Morgone, the Capuchin of Morgone, for a short time, and no, it was before or during I hitchhiked to Germany. Maybe it was the year before I did this. Because my brother was working for a company. He often had to go to Wetzlar, so I was going to visit my brother Wetzlar, my older brother
Hmm.
John, and I made a trip to visit the tomb of Saint Boniface in the anniversary of his martyrdom. That was so inspiring. And then afterwards, I hitchhiked my way back to Italy, down through Frankfurt, Munich, and through the Alps. Okay. So I was just standing there, and somewhere around Strasbourg, this German industrialist gave me a ride all the way to Munich, nearly all the way to Munich. And we
Yeah.
had a long talk. And this poor man had been abused by his father, and we talked about a lot of different things. But he said to me, he says, this is how German culture works. If you have a reputation, you will always have that reputation unless you do one thing. If you just do one thing, all your fans, followers, readers, subscribers, clients, they'll disappear overnight. The one thing you can't do in German society is admit you were wrong about anything.
Yeah.
You can't say footnote 27 in my last book was wrong. I'm going to correct it. You can never, ever do that. You can't say, I got this idea from so and so. You have to put out the image that you are the source of all your content and your talent has produced it all. You can never quote anyone else. And that's not that's not a Christian attitude. Okay. It's something that's very involved in the whole idea of what grifters do and people who monetize off other people. It's
Hmm.
very mercantile because if you were selling expensive chairs in your antique shop, the last thing you're going to do is say, hey, we sell these chairs at a good price in you can find them everywhere else on the boardwalk in Atlantic City, but ours are really made in Amalfi and they're handcrafted and here's the label. Because as soon as you say that, the other person is going to say, let me see if what it's true. And they'll visit those other stores and they might decide to buy the knockoff from Hong Kong rather than the actual handmade one from
Yeah.
Amalfi. Okay. Um, so it's a mentality that is not based on truth or honesty or even sincerity or even the best interests of the audience because for example I will often misspeak during one of these shows and
Yeah.
AJ will catch me and say no
Yeah.
or after the show I'll listen to the program at AJ and say someone will say what did you say there like I said 1984 I meant 1972 we'll print a correction immediately
Hmm.
because not just because that's the policy of Order Militaris Radio TV. That's Christian.
Yeah.
We're here to tell the truth.
Yeah.
We need to correct ourselves. And if we make an error in public, it's our duty to correct ourselves in public.
Yeah.
And And we actually even we actually even have many times said, and I'll say it again, if you find any error in any program in which I or AJ appear, you let us know about it and we'll
Yeah.
dig into it. And if we make an error, we'll retract what we said,
Yeah.
which I don't. I mean, I admire Candace Owens for this because she'll say, if I got this wrong, then correct me in the comments. Okay. And she will take back certain things. Of course, she might be threatened by lawyers too for all the things she's saying. But Trad Inc.,
Mm-mm.
I haven't seen humanity out of the traditionalist leaders since I think since I met Michael Davies in person in New Haven back in like what 90
Yeah.
96, 7, I don't know what it was. And then he came to New Haven. Um, and this is what's really a sign of a sick society in the Catholic Church. And we have to admit that the pedophilia crisis, the homosexual
Mhm.
crisis, Vatican II, modernism, these things just didn't come out of nowhere. I mean, Our Lady at La Salette was already saying the clergy of France are like a sewer of iniquity.
Yeah.
And the whole way that independent Catholic media is acting is a sign of a very sick society in the church. We're not listening to the gospel,
Hmm.
whether it's in Latin or English. We're not paying attention to Jesus Christ. We're not repenting of our sins. We're not trying to live differently the way the world is. And when we're not even acting honestly in how we use social media, you
Yeah.
know. And this doesn't only regard the people who will smear other people with absolute lies. And AJ and I are very familiar with this because we are the victims of that. It even goes to our listeners who will believe the lies and then never ask us for the counter.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago, AJ, remember we did a program where we responded to the people saying bad things about us,
Hmm.
or saying falsehoods about us, I should say. You can say
Yeah.
all the bad things you want about us, but falsehoods, no. You know what surprised me is that after we published that show, um, I noticed that from Rome, my half, like a third of my readership disappeared.
Yeah.
They disappeared because I said what people were saying about me was false. What? And I proved it by citing facts.
Yeah.
So there's something seriously sick, even with Catholics who are on social media coming to independent sites, because like one person said the other day, why they didn't like me from home. They said he started attacking other people. Okay, so I've never attacked anyone, but I will sell the truth about someone. If I say Michael Matt went to a police academy because he himself said it, am I attacking him because I just recite what he said?
Mm-mm.
If I say he probably works at a police academy because some police forces or works at a police force, because some police forces don't deny that he's working with them. The
Yeah.
police force always deny. If I call up New York City Police and say, "Is AJ Bauman working in your department?" They're saying, "We have no AJ Bauman in New York Police Force." Okay, they're
Yeah.
going to deny it immediately. But if you call up and you say, "Does Michael Matt work for you?" And I'm not saying New York, but I won't say exactly what state I was contacted,
Hmm.
and they don't answer, he's not one of our officers, then it's pretty darn certain that at least someone by that name works for them. Of course, Matt's a rather common name, so it might be several Michael Matts, so
Yeah.
um, and if Michael Matt is works for the police and is a policeman, he should admit that to his readers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like we told him, if your family's Jewish and from Germany, you shouldn't call yourself German Catholics like you have for 150 years. You should call yourself what you are, Jewish Catholics.
Hmm.
There's nothing shameful of saying you're a Jewish Catholic. There's like 25 parishes in Israel of Jewish Catholics, okay? Because a lot of Jews are converting to Catholicism. That's a wonderful thing. And we Catholics certainly have nothing against the ethnicity of Jews, okay? Even though modern Jews don't define themselves the way the Hebrews of old. So, you know, that's intolerable. I mean, I can tell you in my family, we're not into publishing, but I have never hid the fact that I'm an Italian American. I've never hid the fact, you know. I didn't hide the fact that I have dual citizenship, US and Italian. I don't hide those facts. I'm proud of it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I think it adds to my character. If you are ashamed of being Jewish when you are Jewish, um, that's kind of like racism.
Hmm.
If you are hiding the fact of who you are, you're basically implying that your people are dishonest by very nature.
Hmm.
And by hiding who you really are, you're making people think that you are dishonest, you know? So, and this is not true of the Jews at Rome. The Jews at Rome who became Catholics in the 16th century, I know of a priest, he has a completely first Jewish name and last Jewish name. He'll tell you immediately, yeah, I'm Jewish. But then he'll specify, I'm Jewish by ethnicity, my family, my descent, my lineage, but my family's been Catholic for 4 centuries. I'm a priest, you know, so even though he speaks Italian, he doesn't speak Hebrew and doesn't say Mass in Hebrew. So, Catholic media, we've been pushing this so long. There's something really wrong in Catholic media because, first of all, hey, how many times, AJ, have you invited these guys on your show to discuss these things?
Um, every chance I get.
Has anyone even picked up the phone,
No.
sent an email,
Mm-mm.
reply, except for one? Didn't Tim Gordon almost take you on an interview?
Yeah.
Yeah, about Catholic Party for America. And he pulled the rug on that one so fast, you know. And Tim Gordon, if you change your mind, you should do the honest thing and have AJ on because, you know, he is a fellow Catholic. We shouldn't be making decisions to have people on our programs or not because they have 10 million followers or 2 followers. So whether they have something to true. You know, imagine what would, AJ, what would happen in Israel if at the wedding feast of Cana, the apostle said, hey, you know, he has no followers. Why should I follow him?
Yeah. Yeah. Then salvation history wouldn't happen at
Yeah.
that time.
If the Catholics in media today, and I'm saying all of them, of course, but many of them, if many of them were in the first century Israel, in the time Christ lived, and acted this way, none of them would be Christians
Yeah.
because they'd say, look, I don't want to offend Herod. I don't want to offend Pontius Pilate. I'm a friend of Caesar. I don't want to
Mhm.
offend the high priests or the Sanhedrins or even the Sadducees, the Pharisees. I want to say something that's kind of vague and in between. And so if they're all piling on Jesus, I'm going to pile on Jesus too. Okay, that's the logic going on here. And if Jesus says, you know, one thing, I'm not going to even apply to him. I'm going to pretend he didn't say that, it doesn't exist. I'll just attack him personally. Like, you know,
Yeah.
you eat at the table of harlots and you pick grain on the Sabbath and you tell men to pick up do work on the Sabbath and you know, you turn over tables in the temple, you know, there's a lot of things that, and if you before social media existed, I really didn't understand all these passages in scripture where the Pharisees or Sadducees are attacking Jesus or the high priest and things like that. But now that you see the same behavior on social media, you're seeing that Christ was interacting with these kind of dishonest grifters, even his own day.
Hmm.
It's the exact same degenerate human psychology.
Yep. So please like and share this program. It'll be on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and the website. And please follow us on our Substack. We have it linked on our sidebar and on the bottom bar. And we'll also have the show page linked on on our Substack when we get everything all uploaded and ready to go. And any last words?
Help AJ's channel Auto Militaris Radio TV. He has links on the page where you can make a donation to equipment because you don't really, he seems like he's in a big studio, but he really works off a desk that's like 1.5 foot wide. Can you imagine? He made 1,400 videos. And the only professional equipment he has is really that mic, and it's not even as professional as you think. So
Hmm.
help him out so he could have a studio, at least like some of these Catholic influencers who have all these ties to media companies. AJ almost never asked for funds, but he could do a lot more if he had some.
Yeah.
And he does have some space in his house. He's willing to convert his entire bedroom over to a studio because for his health problems, yeah, he can't actually sleep flat. Otherwise, I've been telling him to sleep flat more. So he could do a lot more if Catholics decide to start supporting real Catholic media that's not involved in these games, these conflicts of interest, these psychological manipulations, this pagan way of merchandising information. We shouldn't, as Catholics, be involved in that at all. Okay. And we should listen to people because they say the truth and encourage us in a life of virtue. Okay. And that's what true Catholic independent media is about. And if it's not doing that, I sometimes wonder, how do we know these people aren't even Freemasons pretending to be Catholics? Because
Yeah.
you never hear from them what their real background is, and we're the
Yeah.
only ones that tell you. So,
Yep. This is Order Militaris Video TV signing off. Deus Volt.
there's whole